Melbourne has a particular kind of cold at night. Not the sharp, bitter sort, more the kind that slips into your cuffs, settles in your wrists, and finds the quiet spaces inside you. It makes you so alert you can hear the tyres whispering over wet asphalt, the steady drip from an awning, the way your heart keeps time slightly out of step with the city. I was standing under the shelter of a convenience store awning in Carlton, hugging a thin plastic bag of small groceries, milk, instant noodles, a box of tea, a packet of butter biscuits. It was not pouring. Just that fine, stubborn drizzle that feels like someone is determined to stretch out something that should have ended. The street lights cast a damn gold across the road, and the surface shone with blurred reflections, red tail lights sliding past like smudged brush strokes. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. I pulled it out with cold fingers. The screen lit up. One message, short enough to be frightening. "Mia, I'm nearby. Can you come out and see me for 5 minutes?" I stared at the words until the screen dimmed, then brightened again. 5 years. I had not seen Jack in 5 years. In that time, I had trained myself to be fine like it was a skill set. Show up on time, pay bills on time, smile in the right places, say I'm good in the way adults do in a city that never stops moving. But one message, and everything in me sat bolt upright like a gust yanking open a curtain to reveal the room of memories I had convinced myself I had locked. The scariest part was not seeing him again. The scariest part was knowing that if I did not go, I would spend the rest of my life living with the sentence, "What if?" I slid the phone back into my pocket, took a breath, and stepped out from under the awning. The rain tapped my hair like soft knocks. I started walking, and with every step I heard a tram bell somewhere in the distance, an old rhythm, a familiar life. The first time I met Jack was on a Melbourne night like that too. Back then, I was a barista at a small cafe on Lygon Street. It was not fancy. It was simply warm and bright and full of good smells. Espresso, steamed milk, pastries just out of the oven. A few aging prints on the walls, dark wooden tables, and a glass front that was always slightly fogged with breath and weather. Near closing, the cafe lights felt like a cocoon, holding people for a few minutes longer before they had to step back out into real life. I had a habit of watching customers, not because I was nosy, but because the job teaches you to notice. People who ordered a long black were usually rushing or lonely. People who ordered a latte with no sugar were disciplined or pretending to be. Cappuccino drinkers were often easygoing or performing easygoing. And mocha people always seemed to be rewarding themselves like, "I deserve something sweet." Jack walked in close to 10, the door chime ringing as a slice of cold air blew in with him, carrying the smell of rain and that particular damp earth dust that clings to construction sites. He stood in front of the menu board like he was reading a map. His dark hoodie was wet at the shoulders, his hair plastered down, a few drops running along his cheek. He scanned the cafe with an expression that was tired but wary, the look of someone who had only just arrived and did not yet know where he belonged. I asked, "What can I get you?" Jack looked up. His eyes were a light brown, steady without being demanding. His voice was slightly rough, a flat white. "If you have still got it." I laughed. "In Melbourne, asking if we have still got flat whites." He smiled, a touch embarrassed. "Sorry, I've just moved here." "From where?" "Perth." I raised an eyebrow. "And what brought you to Melbourne?" He glanced down at his hands for a beat like he was deciding how honest to be. "Work." And needed a change of air. I made the coffee and set it on the counter. He reached into his pocket for money and a small ring slipped free and clattered onto the floor. A plain, older metal ring, not shiny, scratched with use. It rolled once, then stopped near my shoe. I bent to pick it up. "This yours?" Jack snatched it quickly, as if he was afraid someone might take it. "Thanks," I asked. "Just making conversation. Sentimental." He looked at the ring a moment longer than you would expect. It was my dad's. "He's gone." The words landed in the cafe like a sudden cold drop. I did not know the right thing to say. I managed, softly. "I'm sorry." Jack nodded, picked up his coffee. Before he turned away, he asked, "What's your name?" "Mia." He nodded once like he was filing it away. "Thanks, Mia." And then he walked back out into the rain, leaving behind a strange pocket of warmth where he had been standing, like the cafe had just been touched by something quietly sad. I assumed he was just a stranger passing through, but Jack came back. Not in the casual, accidental way people return to cafes, but in the way someone decides a place will become a routine. The first week, he showed up Tuesday and Thursday nights. Always a flat white, always the corner seat near the window. He did not speak much, just a nod. Paid. Sat. Watched the rain. Sometimes read a book, sometimes simply watched the traffic slide by. The second week he started talking in short, simple lines. "Does Melbourne always change seasons in a single day?" "Yeah," I said. "It is the city's way of reminding you not to be too sure of anything." He gave a small smile. Not big, but real. The third week, he stayed until closing. I wiped tables, turned off the music, cleaned the machine, and he still sat there like he did not want to return to a quiet room. When I locked up, he stood and walked beside me out onto the footpath. "Do you take the tram home?" he asked. "I walk. I live close." He shoved his hands in his pockets and looked down at the wet pavement. "Mind if I walk a bit with you? I do not really feel like going back yet." So we walked. Past laneways that smelled like pizza and beer, past students laughing, past leaves holding on to yellow light in tiny wet beads. We did not talk much. But the silence was comfortable, the kind where you do not have to perform. At my turn if I stopped. "This is me." Jack stood opposite me, hesitating like there was more he wanted to say. In the end, he only asked, "Are you working tomorrow?" "I am." "Then I will come by." He turned and walked away. I watched him go and surprised myself with the realization that I wanted him to come back for reasons that had nothing to do with tips. What we had did not explode like fireworks. It was more like jazz drifting out of a bar down a laneway. You hear it in passing at first. Then one day, you realize you have stopped walking, you are listening properly, and you do not want to leave. And there was a stretch of time before fear crept in, when what we had was so quietly beautiful. I genuinely believed I had met the right person in the right city. Jack began turning up, not just for coffee. He came to ask if I had eaten, to bring me a warm scone because you forget meals, to stand near the counter when we were slammed and carry cups out like it was the most natural thing in the world. One evening we were quiet, the cafe emptying early. I joked, "Dead tonight. Must be the rain." Jack looked out through the glass crowded with droplets. "Nah, people do not like getting wet. You do?" I lifted an eyebrow. "How would you know?" He smiled. "Because you always step out from undercover first." It made me flush in that mildly annoyed way you get when someone sees you too clearly. We started dating without a formal announcement. It happened the way you open a window and suddenly the air changes. There were nights Jack took me to a little Italian place on Lygon. Warm lights, the smell of pasta, the soft hum of voices. He always ordered dessert and said, "We will share." I would tease, "Did not pick you for sweet." He would reply, "I am not. I just know you are." And I hated how right he was. One night we went to an old cinema in Carlton. The seats creaked. Halfway through, the power flickered and the screen went black. The whole room groaned. In the dark, Jack reached across and took my hand. He did not say a word. He just held on. His palm was so warm I forgot about the blackout. When the lights finally came back, he did not let go straight away. He held on a few seconds longer, like he needed to confirm this is real. Another time, after a late shift, he pulled me into an impulsive walk down to St. Kilda. The wind off the bay was brutal, the beach a dark stretch, the pier lights like a string of beads. We sat in the sand. Jack draped his jacket over my shoulders, cracked open a beer and offered me a sip. "Do you ever imagine the future?" he asked. I looked out at the water. "Yeah. I just do not usually say it out loud." "I do," Jack said, and he gave a small laugh. "I imagine a kitchen big enough that you can put your coffee machine anywhere you like. And I will never complain about the smell of coffee in my clothes." I laughed, my chest softening. "Are you flirting?" Jack looked at me, serious enough to shrink the joke. "I am being honest." We walked along the shoreline with wet shoes and cold ankles. Jack stopped suddenly and pulled me into him. Not rushed, not desperate. Just an embrace like he had found somewhere to land. "What's that for?" I asked, voice low. "Nothing," he murmured, his mouth near my ear. "I just like that you are here. That was when I learned some sentences do not need to be clever. They just need to be true." We developed small rituals, and later I realised they were Jack's love language. On Sunday mornings, I dragged him to Queen Victoria Market. He complained out of habit, but he always came. He would buy me strawberries and say, "You look like someone who needs vitamin C." I would roll my eyes. "Sounds like a diagnosis." He would grin. "I am good at it." When the rain was heavy and I suggested an Uber, Jack would say, "Tram." "It is raining. Tram is the Melbourne way." We would stand at the stop with wind-driven rain stinging our faces. Jack would angle the umbrella, so I stayed drier than he did. "You are soaked," I would tell him. He would shrug. I am used to it. But I knew he was not talking about the weather. On Friday nights, he took me up to his building's rooftop, a place where half the city spread out below us like a lit-up map. We would sit close, sharing a thin blanket. Jack would count the seconds between lightning and thunder. "So you know how far away it is," he said. "You scared of storms?" I teased. He answered evenly, "I am scared of things getting close before I am ready." It sounded like a comment about weather. It was not. Once I got sick, feverish, messy, babbling nonsense. Jack stayed by my bed all night, changing cold cloths on my forehead. In the morning, I opened my eyes and saw him slumped in a chair, his hand still wrapped around my wrist as if I might disappear. I watched him long enough that my eyes stung. I did not want to wake him. I only squeezed his hand. Barely. Jack's eyes opened instantly, like he had never really been asleep. "You all right?" he asked, voice rough. I nodded. He exhaled like he had been carrying a stone in his chest. "Do not scare me like that again. Scare you how?" He looked straight at me. No dodging. Losing you. The truth sat there between us, bare and real, and I still did not know how to step fully into it. There was a period when we felt like two kids sneaking happiness. Jack took me to his work site. I wore a hard hat and stood among drills and engines, watching him signal to the crew, focused and steady. In that moment, he was not the man who sat alone by a cafe window. He was someone who knew exactly what he was responsible for. On the way back, we stopped for meat pies. Jack glanced at me and asked quietly, "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Like what? Like I can do something right." I smiled. "You can." He did not smile back. He stared out the car window, his voice dropping. My dad died in a work accident. He went to work like any other day and did not come home. Since then, I have always felt like no matter how careful you are, life can still take the thing you love. I did not know the perfect words. I just reached for his hand. "Then love before it gets taken," I said. Jack gave a sad little laugh. "That is exactly what scares me." And I understood. Jack loved like someone who had already lost once. He loved like he did not want to repeat it. But my fear was different. I grew up on phrases like, "Do not be unrealistic. Do not depend on anyone. Love does not pay rent." I watched my parents live beside each other like two people servicing the same long debt. I promised myself I would love properly one day, but in my head, properly had quietly come to mean safely. Jack loved with his whole body in it. He could not hide it. He could not fake fine. If he chose you, he wanted you to know. And me, I always held a part of myself back, like a hand gripping the railing, refusing to step all the way over. That is what made us beautiful. And that is what made us fragile. That summer, the heat sat heavy over the city like a lid. The news talked about bushfires and hot winds and smoke drifting across the sky. Some days, Melbourne carried the faintest smell of ash, like a warning about something you could not see but could feel approaching. Jack suggested, "Great Ocean Road this weekend. Get some air." So we went. Long drive, soft music, wind through the car. Looking at the ocean, I felt like I could be someone else, someone who did not always calculate everything. We stopped at a lookout above the cliffs. The wind kicked up, throwing my hair around. Jack stood at the wooden railing, staring at the horizon like he was reading a long letter. "I am going back to Perth," he said, so softly it was almost swallowed by the sea. I turned. "When?" 3 weeks. Work, good opportunity, big project, better money, more stability." My stomach dropped. I tried to sound like an adult. "That is good." Jack looked at me, direct. "I do not want to go if you tell me you need me to stay." It was a door opening right in front of me. All I had to do was walk through it. All I had to say was, "Stay. Choose me." But my mind filled with traffic. Rent, career, fear of dependence, fear that if I loved too hard I would lose control. I was quiet for too long. Jack smiled, but it looked like someone swallowing something bitter. "You do not have to answer right now." But I knew the truth. There was not really a right now and a later. There was only a moment. And if you missed it, it became a lifetime. In the weeks before Jack left, we kept living like everything was normal. And that normality hurt more than anything. He still came to the cafe, still waited for me to close, still walked me home, still reminded me to bring a jacket, still bought me pastries, but sometimes I would catch him looking at me like he was memorizing my face, holding my features a second longer than usual, as if his eyes could store what time was about to take. One night we stood under shelter in the laneway behind the cafe. The rain had thickened, water running along the gutter like a small stream. Jack pulled a bunch of wildflowers from his pocket, tiny yellow ones he had obviously picked somewhere on the way. "I know it is silly," he said with an awkward smile, "but I wanted you to have something before I go." I brought them to my nose. They smelled like wet grass. I tried to joke. "Did you steal these?" He shrugged. "Possibly." I laughed, and in the sound of it, for a moment, I almost forgot I was about to lose him. Jack's gaze settled on me. His voice slowed. "Mia, do you love me?" The question dropped into the laneway. The rain kept falling. The city kept moving. But I stood completely still. I did love him, but I was afraid that saying yes would come with responsibility, with choice, with the demand that I finally bet something real. So I gave him the safest version. "I care about you." Jack shut his eyes for a second. When he opened them, his gaze was still gentle, but something had collapsed behind it. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Care is fine." I hated myself for making him accept fine. On the day of the airport, it rained. Tullamarine has that sterile, indifferent feeling. People arriving, leaving, suitcase wheels rattling, announcements droning, bright white lights. Everything is designed so nobody stays longer than necessary. I walked beside Jack. He pulled his suitcase. I carried a bag of butter biscuits I had baked because it was the only gift I could think of that did not feel useless in the face of a flight. At the check-in line, Jack turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" I tried to joke. "Go on." He drew in a breath. "If I tell you I love you, what will you do?" I heard a boarding call. I heard suitcase wheels. I felt my heart thudding like it wanted to run. I looked into his eyes, light brown, like damp timber after rain. And then I did the most cowardly thing. I smiled. "I appreciate that." Jack did not blink. He nodded like someone receiving a sentence. He leaned down and held me. That hug was tight enough I could hear his breathing break. Into my ear he whispered, "You will regret this." I answered so softly, it barely counted. "Maybe." He let go, took his suitcase, walked towards security. He did not look back. I stood there holding a bag of biscuits like I was holding something that had already died. Time moved on in the cruelest way. You do not have to do anything, and it still moves. I graduated. I got a job at a small studio. I moved house twice. I learned to fix little things myself like an independent adult. I started going to the gym. I met friends for coffee. I posted photos online and looked fine. Jack messaged sometimes. At first it was often sunsets at Cottesloe Beach, photos from sites, a casual, "How's your day, mate?" That sounded so Australian and so ordinary. I always replied, but I kept a careful distance, like I was holding a glass I did not want to spill. Then the messages thinned out. One day he wrote, "I'm in Melbourne next week. Want to catch up?" I stared at the screen for ages. I could have said yes. One word. And maybe everything would have shifted. But I thought, what is the point of meeting if I am still not brave? Meeting just to stir the ache and then run again, so I replied, "Next week's a bit hectic for me." Jack saw it. He did not reply. After that, his name sat quiet in my phone like an empty chair in a room no one entered. Later I met Ethan. Ethan was kind, stable, the safe sort everyone praises. He took me to dinner at sensible times. He did not disappear. He did not make me guess. He cared in a way that was reasonable and consistent. We dated for a while. I tried. I genuinely tried. But some nights, with Ethan asleep beside me, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder why not hurting did not automatically mean happy. I would hear a tram outside and suddenly remember the airport. I would see a soft drizzle and suddenly remember the laneway. Once Ethan asked, "You go distant sometimes. What are you thinking about?" I said, "Nothing." And inside, I thought, I'm missing someone on the other side of the country. Eventually, Ethan and I ended quietly. No cheating, no screaming. Just two people realizing they could not reach the deepest part of each other. Ethan said something that stayed with me. "You're not wrong. You're just somewhere else." I did not know how to answer because the somewhere else in me had a name. Jack. And then came the night I received the message. "Mia, I'm nearby. Can you come out and see me for 5 minutes?" I stepped out from under the awning. I walked through the drizzle like I was afraid I would change my mind. Jack was standing on the corner beneath a yellow streetlight wearing a black coat, hair damp. He looked older, broader through the shoulders, and tired in a way that did not feel temporary. When he saw me, he did not smile straight away. He just looked like he was afraid he had got it wrong. Mia. Jack. We stood at a distance that was polite, exactly the distance your heart wants to close. He said it plainly. "I'm only in Melbourne for 2 days. I'm getting married." The words sank like a stone. I thought my heart might stop. It did not. It just slowed like it was recognizing an old song. "Congratulations," I said. My voice did not crack, but something in me did. Jack nodded. "I figured you'd say that," I asked because I needed to know. "Are you happy?" Jack looked down at the wet footpath. "I'm okay, she's good. She chooses me." The last sentence pierced me because I knew what I had not done. Jack took a breath. "I wanted to see you so I could stop living in the what if." He stepped closer by one pace. "If that night at the airport you'd said don't go, do you think we would have made it?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say of course, but the truth was I did not know. Love does not guarantee the outcome. It only guarantees you were brave enough to try. So I told him the only honest thing I had. I do not know if we would have made it, but I do know I was wrong not to try. Jack closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were slightly red. "I've waited years to hear you say that," he said. "Not to come back, just to know I wasn't imagining it." I whispered, "I'm sorry." He nodded. "I'm sorry too, for asking you a question when I knew you weren't ready to answer." We stood there while the rain kept falling and the city kept moving, like a film continuing to play even when the main character cannot move. A voice called from down the street. "Jack, we're late." Jack took half a step back. "Take care of yourself, Mia." I nodded. "You too." Jack turned away, and this time he looked back once, just once. His eyes said what words could not. "I really did love you." Then he disappeared into the rain. That night I went home, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the kitchen floor. I thought I would cry straight away. I did not. I just sat and listened to the fridge humming like a tired breath. Listened to the rain tapping the window. Listened to regret pace circles in my chest like an animal that could not find the door. I opened my phone and typed. If I'd said, "Don't go," would you have stayed? I stared at it. Then I deleted it. Because he was getting married, and I did not have the right to drag him out of his life just to soothe my own cowardice. So I wrote the cleanest line I could manage. "I hope you're happy, Jack. Truly." I hit send. Delivered. Not seen. I placed the phone face down, as if not looking might make my heart hurt less. The next morning, Melbourne was sunny in that unfair way the city has, like it refuses to give you the weather your feelings deserve. I went out anyway. I bought a flat white from a cafe near Lygon, like a small act of self-inflicted pain. The barista asked, "Sugar?" I shook my head. No. I sat on the steps near University Square, watching people pass as if I had not just lost something. My phone buzzed. Jack. Seen. A message came through immediately, like he had had it ready. I tried not to read it. I promised myself I would not pull you into this again. But I could not. Another message followed. I fly back to Perth tonight. Before I go, I left something for you. Do not open it somewhere crowded. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. I replied. Where? The laneway behind the old cafe on Lygon, where we used to stand out of the rain. That afternoon I walked to that laneway. Melbourne laneways all share the same bones. Wet bricks, graffiti, metal bins, the smell of beer mixed with old rain. But this one was different. This one had us in it, even if only in memory. In the corner, Jack described, there was a brown envelope pinned under a small brick, like someone was afraid the wind might take it. I crouched and picked it up. My hands were shaking. On the front, in Jack's handwriting, clear and painful, were the words, Mia, for the life we did not choose, I carried it home. When I closed the door, the flat went quiet in that way rooms do when they are waiting for you. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. Inside were 3 things. First, an old ring, his dad's ring, the one I had picked up from the cafe floor on the night we met. It was cold and heavy, scratched like a life worn down by time. Second, a Polaroid from the rooftop he used to take me to. Half the city behind me, lights like scattered salt. I was turned slightly sideways, smiling, hair blown across my face, not looking at the camera. On the back he had written, "This is the night you smiled without armor." Third, a folded letter. I opened it. Jack did not write in grand dramatic language. He wrote the way he lived, plain, careful, and true. "Mia, I used to think I would get over it. The truth is, I just learnt how to live with a hollow shaped like you. I am getting married. She's a good person. She chooses me every day. And I will try to be the kind of man who deserves that choice. But I need to say one thing before I close this door. I loved you. I still love you in a way time has not erased. It has only made it quieter. You were not wrong to be scared. I was scared too. It is just that I waited for you to say, 'Do not go,' and you chose silence. I am giving this ring back to you, not so you can keep me, but so you remember next time, if someone makes you want to say 'do not go,' say it. Goodbye, Mia. If there is another universe, I hope you were braver, and I hope I was too. Jack." When I finished reading, I finally cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just quietly, tears dropping straight onto the page. I cried because our love had been so close, just 1 sentence away. I cried because sometimes tragedy is not betrayal or disaster. Sometimes it is a single moment you were not brave enough to live properly. The ring slipped from my fingers and rolled once on the table before stopping, as if it too was tired. That night I went up to my building's rooftop. The wind was cold. The smell of old rain clung to the rail. The city below glowed like a map with no way back. I held the ring in my palm and pictured Jack at the airport, suitcase in tow, trying to look normal in a line of strangers. I thought about the woman he was about to marry, a woman who chose him every day. And I thought about myself, someone who had had a chance to choose and had not. I opened my phone. The keyboard lit up. I typed, "Don't go." 3 words. The 3 words I owed him at Tullamarine all those years ago. I stared at them until my eyes hurt. Then I deleted them. Because love, if it still has any decency left, is not dragging someone away from the life they are trying to build just to patch your own regret. So I wrote instead. I understand now. I am sorry I did not say it back then. Thank you for loving me. I hope you find peace, Jack. I hit send. This time, I did not wait for scene. I locked the screen and set the phone down on the rooftop floor. I stood and let the wind pass over my face, let the tears dry into salt. I closed my fist around the ring, not to hold Jack, but to hold the lesson. And I said it to myself clearly, like the ending I wish someone had handed me sooner. Bravery is not being certain you will be right. Bravery is accepting you might be wrong and choosing anyway. You can speak up and still be rejected. You can choose and still fail. You can love and still lose. But losing like that is different from losing to silence. That kind of pain means something, because at least you stood in the light with your own heart instead of hiding in the dark of what if. We only get one life. There is no rewind button for an airport, a laneway, a rainy night, a question you did not answer. And that is why, if life hands you a moment where your heart knows what it wants, answer it, even if you are wrong. Because being wrong can teach you. It can shape you. It can heal eventually. But doing nothing leaves you with one thing that lasts longer than love itself: regret. I looked down at the city and whispered, as if speaking to the version of me at 25. Next time, if your heart calls out, answer it. A tram bell rang somewhere below like an old song. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I did not want to go back. I just wanted to go forward, late but honest,